let's talk about the nuclear state of the world. So this is in response to Elizabeth Warren. She had mentioned that she wanted to implement a no first use policy when it comes to nuclear weapons. The first Democratic debate was awesome. They normalized speaking Spanish. They normalized criticizing the police. The second Democrat debate would be the rise of the corporate Democrats, the rise of the corporatists, the rise of neoliberalism. So the right-wing Democrats, attacked the shit out of the Medicare for All plan of Bernie Sanders, and that's going to be the plan that gets Bernie Sanders elected. So it's not very smart. Essentially, so many Democrats are just trying to fly under Bernie's shadow, thinking that if they triangulate between Bernie's extreme position and their, middle-of-the-road position, they'll be viewed as centrist, moderates, middle-of-the-road, just like average Americans. Bernie Sanders is middle-of-the-road. He's an Eisenhower Republican. Look at the policies of Eisenhower. So he's a moderating voice. So Bernie Sanders is a badass, and he kicked ass, and it was a lot of fun. Elizabeth Warren did a really good job. Marianne Williamson, she did a really good job. She did a fantastic job, to be honest with you. She was getting the crowd going, and John Delaney was a piece of shit. Hickenlooper was a piece of shit. Some of their, eventually, after an hour of listening to them, some of the things I started saying, okay, maybe, we got to not just overfund everything and give free everything to everybody. Maybe that's not the best policy. But of course it's not, right? So we just got to keep the budget trim, keep government small, lean, efficient, and to provide Medicare for all. So that's, my little take on it. Elizabeth Warren had a brilliant idea about nuclear weapons. So the No First Use Act, she had actually introduced this bill earlier this year, February 11th, 2019. It was Adam Smith and Elizabeth Warren. And Adam Smith and Elizabeth Warren introduced the bill, No First Use Act, and it's only one sentence. It's 12 words long. It is the policy of the United States to not use nuclear weapons first. Donald makes me nervous. He's so flippant when he jokes around. How come we don't ever use these nukes? And the whole concept of what? No first use? So we won't initiate a nuclear war. There's only 9 nuclear countries in the world with nuclear weapons. So there's only 9 nuclearized weaponed countries in the world. Out of 200 countries, only 9 have nukes. So we could set the example. Elizabeth Warren, her reasons are that the No First Use Act gives a nice clear-cut, designation of where we stand on nukes. We believe that nukes are a deterrent, so we would never initiate a nuclear war. I mean, there's 9 countries, so that means there's 8 other countries that have nuclear weapons. And to declare that we will never, drop an aggressive, preemptive nuclear bomb on another nation, this is so much better than where we are right now. God, the whole thing about Donald having his finger on the button, that was a good criticism by Hillary, because it is terrifying. We got 27 wars. Everybody's pushing him into Syria, so more war, for the rest of our lives. So Elizabeth Warren says that by passing the No First Use Act, it declares that nukes are a deterrent. The bill would reduce chances of a nuclear miscalculation and help us to maintain our moral and diplomatic leadership in the world. Fantastic. Fantastic. We can declare the No First Use Act and then get the other nuclear countries to declare a No First Use Act, and then we are one step towards having peace, amongst these nations of the world. These are treaties. When it comes to warfare, who knows what the fuck can actually happen. But I love this idea. This is a wonderful idea. The government is clearly saying this is where we stand. And, there are some challenges. Some nations around the world, and America has not, jumped on the No First Use Act, and we'll talk about their excuses here in a second. So the nuclear state of the world, we have 9 countries in the world that have nukes. America, right, Russia, everybody knows about America and Russia. There's 15,000 nuclear weapons all throughout the world. So 15,000, that's actually, you know, I mean, I heard we only need 100 in the world to have a nuclear winter. One drops and then just, you know, everybody's going to start dropping them. So by having minimizing them, lowering them. The United States at one point in time had 70,000. During the Cold War, Russia, the USSR, had 45,000 in 1986. So they had 45,000 nukes, 70,000 nukes. We only need 100 to blow up the entire world, but, you know, we got 70,000. So that's, what, let's see, 10 times 70. So we could blow up the world 700 times, just in case, you know, the first time we blew up the world, it didn't, you know, take. We want to go ahead and do it another 700 times, just in case, right? Just to make sure not even a grasshopper will survive, or a cockroach, right? We're going to get rid of the cockroaches, too. So we have 15,000 nukes total in the world today. So, you know, that's what America had 70,000, Russia had 45,000 in 86. So that's pretty remarkable that we've, you know, knocked our nuke total population, the total amount of nukes in the world, to 15,000. The United States and Russia, of course, still own 90% of those. So we have 9 nuclear countries in the world. The United States and Russia own 90% of them. So the 2 biggest, you know, nuclear weapons proliferators still today, you know, are the 2 Cold Warrior, you know, little babies. So the U.S. developed the nuclear bomb in 1945 in response to, you know, hopefully it was Einstein wrote a letter, signed a letter, and then FDR started Manhattan Project, and Trinity was the first test bomb, and then Nagasaki and Hiroshima, hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians, citizens, men, women, children, everybody just got incinerated. Dwight D. Eisenhower is very much opposed to dropping the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. He said, we should have never done that to those people. That was just an awful thing of what happened to those people. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, again, Bernie Sanders, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So Russia had developed the bomb in 1949. So the U.S. developed the nuclear bomb in 1945. Russia developed it in 1949, 4 years later. And so the justification for the 1945 dropping was to, you know, save people's lives, to end the war, and it did bring about an unconditional surrender. But you probably could have dropped it just around somewhere, videotaped it, said, hey, look what we have, but they said that it wouldn't have been as strong of an impact. So, yeah, Russia is going to develop it in 1949, apparently with espionage. I don't know if that's the Rosenbergs or what have you. But 4 years later, and this is going to bring a balance in the world, because with America owning 50% of the world, World War II devastated Europe, and so we controlled 50% of the world. We had the nukes, the only one that had the nukes, you know, everybody's kind of like, oh, shit, hopefully they don't, you know, fucking lose their shit. And so when Russia developed the bomb in 1949, or the USSR, when the Soviet Union developed their nuke in 1949, that brought about a balance of power. So nuclear bombs are absolutely horrendous. We could totally wipe ourselves out. But what has happened historically is because of mutually assured destruction. You start a nuclear war with another country, you know, you're done for. If you start a nuclear war with another country that has nukes, so that's going to destroy both countries. And so what the nuclear weapons have done has been, you know, actually quite fantastic. It has brought about a peace because of mutual assured destruction. Now people still fight conventional warfare, and so all that, you know, can still go on, but because the nuclear countries don't ever attack each other. And so that's a remarkable development for India, Pakistan, for, you know, Israel. Israel got the bomb to protect themselves, to make sure that they won't, you know, be wiped off the map. So, okay, Russia developed the bomb in 1949. The United Kingdom developed the bomb in 1952, 3 years after Russia. France in 1960, 8 years after the UK. China in 1964, 4 years after France. And China is particularly interesting because China, as soon as they develop a nuclear weapon, they go ahead and declare the no first use policy. So China's had a no first use policy for the last 55 years. So China has been, leading the world on, this no first use policy of nuclear weapons since they've developed nuclear weapons. China's been on the right side of history. They got a moral, a good sense of morality. They've been trying to get America to jump on board ever since, but we don't jump on board. So ever since China got nuclear weapons, they have been, dedicated to the no first use policy. Israel gets the bomb in 1966. India gets the bomb in 1974. South Africa in the 1980s. Pakistan in 1998. North Korea 2006. Oh, the axis of evil, right? Well, the country that didn't have nukes got obliterated. Horrible lesson for the world. If you have a nuke, so that's... what Vietnam was, instead of the nuclear countries attacking each other, they would use poor third world countries as a proxy, paying one side and giving weapons and, ammunition and supplies to one side, and just essentially allow all these poor peasants to fight these imperial wars of colonial conquest. So the total, who all has nuclear countries, a lot of these countries, they developed them. So first was America, then Russia, then the United Kingdom, then France, then China, then Israel, India, South Africa, Pakistan, North Korea. So, well, there's a lot of these countries. South Africa is going to sign a non-proliferation treaty. So some of these countries don't have nuclear weapons anymore. The 9 nuclear countries of the world are India, North Korea, Pakistan, Israel, the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, and China. So the United Nations Security Council, U.S., Russia, U.K., France, and China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel. Now, the distinction between these, you got non-proliferation treaty nuclear states. So they signed the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, whereas India, North Korea, Pakistan, and Israel has not signed the NPT, the non-proliferation treaty of nuclear weapons. So the NP nuke states, UK, Russia, UK, France, China, that's the UN Security Council, and then the other nuclear states are India, North Korea, Pakistan, Israel. That's your 9 total nuclear countries. So say those countries over and over again until you've memorized them. India, Pakistan, North Korea, Israel, US, Russia, UK, France, China. Okay, so the 5 countries of the UN Security Council, and then the 4 other ones, India, Pakistan, they're right across from each other, and North Korea, of course, Israel, of course. So there's some other nukes that are out and about. The NATO member nuclear sharing states are Belgium, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Turkey. Now there's 200 total nuclear weapons that's distributed amongst Germany, Belgium, Italy, and the Netherlands and Turkey. So these are possible nuclear countries. The reason why they passed the nuclear proliferation treaty was because the United States has the codes, okay? So out of the 5 countries, they're just stockpiling the nuclear weapons for the United States. And there's about 200 of them, which is about, the same as Israel. So amongst 5 countries, you got 200 nukes, and that's, the same amount that Israel has in total. So if you're like, oh no, Belgium and the Netherlands and Italy and Turkey and Germany got nukes, you shouldn't be worried about it, especially if you're an American. The United States leads this NATO sharing of nukes. We give the nukes to the 5 nations to stockpile, but they have to get the launch codes, the nuclear launch codes from the Department of Defense to activate them. And so, 5 nations can become nuclearized quickly if need be, but they don't have active nukes, so they're, essentially holding American nukes, which is nice. So they take all the risk, right? They take all the risk of the nuke being attacked or there being a meltdown, and they have no decision on when to use them. It's only the United States that decides that. So, there's 200 nukes that's being shared by 5 countries of NATO. You have 9 total. There's states that used to have nukes. Belarus, they signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1992, so they were nuclear-free in 92. Kazakhstan, 1995, they signed the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. South Africa and Ukraine, 1991, 1994, respectively, signed the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. So Belarus, Kazakhstan, South Africa, Ukraine, they all had nukes, but then they gave them up, Belarus and Kazakhstan, because they're part of the old Soviet Union. And South Africa, for whatever reason, Ukraine. 94 is when they signed it, and they committed to still the Non-Proliferation Treaty even after Russia annexed Crimea, and the whole, Ukraine versus Russia thing has been happening. So that's the state of the nuclear world, okay? That's the state of nuclear countries in the world. You got 9 countries: U.S., Russia, UK, France, China, Israel, Pakistan, North Korea, and India. You also have 5 of the nuclear sharing countries, but they have nukes that can't be turned on until America says to turn them on. Canada had 4 nukes. They might have 1 or 2 nukes left. So the U.S. had also delivered nuclear weapons to Canada and Greece in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But apparently they got rid of them, or I'm not for sure what happened to those nukes. But they, like the nuclear sharing agreement with Belgium, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Turkey, they delivered them to Canada and Greece to essentially do the same thing. But I guess they don't have nukes anymore. They got rid of them. Canada destroyed 3 of the 4 that they had, so that means that leaves 1, right? So Canada might have a nuke, and Greece might have a nuke too, lying about somewhere in the closet in the basement somewhere, gathering dust. So that's the state of, the nuclear world. We got 9 countries that have their own nukes, unilaterally could use nukes, and then you have 5 of the members of the NATO. So I think that's a good, strategically military tactic for the U.S. to be able to nuclearize 5 countries in Europe if if we ever needed to do that. Now, there's never any justified reason to drop a nuclear weapon first. There's a couple things: biological weapons, chemical weapons, biological, chemical, and then if there's a massive influx of conventional warfare. So if, the Russia and Israel, essentially you have a right to self-defense. And so some of these countries, well, I'll get into their specifics here in a second. But to drop a nuke is to possibly start a nuclear winter and then end all of humanity as we know it. So how could you justify dropping a nuke first? Most Americans are opposed to us initiating a nuclear war to stop an out-of-control empire in World War II. So we had, Japan, Germany, Italy. That's why we dropped a nuke, to stop an out-of-control empire that just kept taking nations over without anybody stopping it. So what else? What other reasons could you, possibly think that dropping a nuke would be an acceptable, first strike? Why would you preemptively strike someone with a nuke? So if they did use conventional weapons, you're about to lose, and so you just pop one off real quick, even though they didn't use any nuclear weapons. That's Israel. Israel says to, if their existence, if there's a threat to their existence, a massive invasion, and if someone uses a nuke on you, you have a right to defend yourself. And that's another thing with the no first use policy. You're saying, I'm not going to drop the nuke first, but I preserve the right to drop it second. You drop it on me, you drop it on any of the allies, we have a right to defend ourselves. So we won't start the nuclear war. The nuclear war that's going to wipe everybody out. World War III is going to be fought with nukes. World War IV fought with sticks and stones. So we're going to start that. Is that America's legacy? So just the small pack of survivors running around a radiated Earth. That's going to be what they're talking about. Great job, America. You destroyed all the world. You destroyed yourself. Well, good fucking job. So, to drop a nuke, to what? To consciously decide to wipe out a country, to wipe out a city? Jesus Christ, that's the death penalty for an entire city and possibly for the entire world. It's also suicidal, so it's just a bad idea. Promising to never drop a nuke first is just good, foreign policy. Like I said, do you stick with everything you say? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I could see some, emergency circumstances, possibly, but essentially it sets a good boundary. It sets a good policy. It's easy to understand. So militarily, I think, starting the war, whoever drops the first nuke, that should be the nation that all the other countries wipes out, because they're the ones saying that, we're allowed to drop nukes now. So by promising the world that we're, going to we believe in self-defense, but we don't believe in wars of imperialism and aggression. We defend goodness, righteous, truth, justice, and the American way, puts us back on the world stage as moral leaders. The U.S. needs to be the world's leader in denuclear proliferation anyways. I mean, we got all the nukes. We're the only one that has used them. We're the empire. So Jesus Christ, we have got to set a good example and role model for the rest of the world, and then try to get other countries to do like us. So it was Elizabeth Warren, Adam Smith. They introduced this bill. The NFU is also used for chemical and biological warfare. So I think Nixon said some crazy shit about, okay, I'll sign this no biological or chemical warfare thing. We don't need the germs. If we need to, do something, we could just nuke them and wipe them out. So, Nixon is kind of flippant when he's talking about nukes too. So sure, yeah, we could ban biological warfare. We could still wipe them out with nukes. Okay, no, chemical, biological nukes. These are, we've drawn a line in the sand with chemical and biological warfare. So, in war is hell. So, anything's supposed to go in war? No, not for America, because we're better than that. We're better people. And so we have, no chemical or biological warfare, and no starting nuclear fucking wars. Don't start a goddamn nuclear war, you fucking president piece of shit. Jesus Christ, can you do that? And just don't push, there's a button right there. Don't slip and just, put your elbow on it and push the damn button. It'd be so easy to do. So the first nation to actually join this no first use policy. So the no first use policy was China, 1964, 55 years. They've been a great role model for the world. China's setting the example. China's being the adult in the world. They didn't engage in the nuclear arms race with USSR and USA. They said, we're not going to drop the nuclear first. We're not going to drop it first. We won't drop the bomb. We will not initiate a nuclear war that eventually wipes out all of humanity. Oh boy, China, how brave, the courage of their morality. You would think it'd be, obvious to do something like that. In 2005, 2008, 2009, 2011, China reaffirmed their commitment to the no first use policy. 55 years consistently. So China keeps on wanting America to do the right thing, adopt the no first use policy, the NFU policy, and then get other nuclear countries onto the NFU policy too. The no first use policy. India has adopted the no first use policy. So China has adopted it. India has adopted it. We got 9 countries, right? So that's 2 of the 9 countries that essentially I feel warm and cozy that China isn't going to, initiate a nuclear war that's going to wipe out all of humanity. India's not going to initiate a nuclear war that's going to wipe out all of humanity. So they adopted the, NFU policy. India did after its second nuclear test in 1998. And then in August 1999, India released a draft of their NFU doctrine. So for India, the only person that can drop a nuke is the Prime Minister, and that's Modi. Everybody's criticizing Tulsi, saying that Modi is this anti-Muslim extremist, and he's essentially the Hindu version of Hitler and all this other shit. He's never engaged in genocide. There was a riot, 20 to 10 years ago, that they said he could have stopped, and there was, hundreds of people had died in that. So, that's like the big criticism against Modi, M-O-D-I. So this Prime Minister Modi is the Prime Minister of the largest democracy in the world. India elects this guy, so they keep voting him in, electing him, and then, Tulsi talked to him one time. She does talk to Assad and al-Sisi, so she does cozy up with these dictators, which is somewhat alarming, somewhat, concerning. But as long as she's our girl, then that's exactly what we want, a channel for some diplomacy. So since 1999, for 20 years, India says they're not going to be the country that wipes out the world. And so Modi, he's committed to the non-first use policy. So this crazy, horrible Modi, this prime minister that, Tulsi isn't supposed to talk to, has a better foreign policy when it comes to nuclear weapons than the United States government. The United States government is basically, who knows? You know, we got nukes, we're ambivalent, we're smart. Israel does the same thing. It's probably where we got it from. But it's strategic ambivalence. So it's like, will we, won't we? You never know. You just never know with us. We're wild, will 'em, deal 'em, you know. So China's setting the good example, you know, 1964, India, once they got nuclear weapons in 99, so they're doing the same thing that China's doing. Even North Korea has adopted, so North Korea has adopted the no first use policy with nuclear weapons. You know, Kim Jong-un has all this rhetoric, and I think he might have said that, you know, he was going to do something first, but at the 2016 7th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea, Kim Jong-un announces that the policy of North Korea is to not initiate a nuclear war that wipes out, you know, all of humanity. And so, fantastic. North Korea has a more peaceful nuclear policy than America. India, China has a more peaceful nuclear policy than America. So, you know, America, you know, North Korea is a totalitarian dictatorship. They have a lot of problems, but, you know, I think they've legalized marijuana. Canada's legalized marijuana. A lot of, you know, it's freedom. But North Korea, if North Korea and China, with all their human rights abuses, India, they have so many, you know, poor people, if they're able to be the adult in the room, to set the example, to be the role model, and they're not going to initiate a nuclear war which destroys all of humanity, that's a good thing, okay? So I don't know if we want to follow in their lead, but if these horrible, you know, evil dictatorships can say that they're not going to start a nuclear war that's going to wipe out all of humanity, I think America should be able to say that too. We're the moral leaders of the world, and yet we're, you know, being flanked by the morality of North Korea, India, and China when it comes to nuclear weapons, to dropping the first nuclear bomb. Now, there's several nations that doesn't jump on the NFU policy. So Pakistan is, you know, America and Pakistan are just, you know, basically, you know, best buds when it comes to thinking that, you know, they might be the first one to start the nuclear war that wipes out all of humanity. Pakistan rejects the no first use policy because they said that it was effective to stop India from a massive military intervention during the 2001-2008 crisis when non-state actors carried out terrorist attacks in India. And India had responded proportionally. Pakistan was worried that they wouldn't be proportional. They would start a military, you know, war against Pakistan, saying that these terrorists were actually, you know, Pakistani citizens or officials. So Pakistan, they have a actually very strict first-use policy. Okay, so the first use policy, NATO has a policy of first use, America's got a policy of first use, Pakistan has a policy of first use, Russia, United Kingdom, France. Obama had considered a no first use policy in August 2016 but rejected it. 2017 efforts were made by Congress to pass the no first use. The no first use policy or require congressional approval for a preemptive nuclear strike. But that, you know, went nowhere. So they've been talking about it, right? They've been talking about it. So Pakistan, so who's going to be the first country to drop a nuke? Well, it's been China for, you know, 55 years. They've been very responsible with their nuclear weapons. They're not going to initiate the nuclear war that wipes out, brings in the nuclear winter, and then wipes out all life on Earth, all plants, all animals, everything dies. I guess except for the planet itself. Maybe it'll recuperate after 1 million years. So, NATO has a first-use policy. America has a first-use policy. Pakistan, just think about Pakistan. They're like, hey, you know what? If we could drop it first, you know, we'll be the nation that, you know, starts a nuclear winter and wipes out all life as we know it. So, is that good? Do you like that as an American? That Pakistan's like, you know what? If we got to drop a nuclear bomb first, that's what we're going to do. You know, we're listening to Sun Tzu, The Art of War. We're being clever. You know, you never know with us with nuclear weapons. Don't fucking play games, Jesus Christ. Don't fucking play games. So when it comes to, you know, Israel, they do a calculated ambiguity because Israel's so smart. Well, we got 200 nukes, but do we? And if we do, will we use them first? Maybe. Maybe we'll use them first. So Israel, Pakistan, they're committed to possibly being the first country to drop in a nuke. America, Russia, United Kingdom, and France. So only China is the only person of the Security Council that is showing maturity when it comes to the nuclear policy of the world. So the other 4 countries, so who can drop I would say, if as a betting man, that the countries who's adopted the no first use policy for 55 years, I trust that. China's has, they're like, we're not going to escalate. We're not going to get part of the nuclear arms race. We're not going to, play fucking games with this shit. We got a nuclear bomb. We can defend ourselves if we need to, but we're not going to start any wars with it. It's common sense. It's smart, and it's fucking nuclear fucking bombs. So quit